This is Charlie. Charlie here goes to the Beekman's College Center for the mentally challenged. Charlie really wants to be smart because he thinks it'll make him so cool and people like him. So he undergoes the operation. Congrats, Charlie. How do you feel? That's great, champ. Anyway, Charlie's so cool now. He got his brain played around like a lab rat, and that won't come up later at all. And he's starting to actually mentally develop past his IQ with 70. As his doctor said, he's like a sponge. But instead of sucking up water, he's sucking up knowledge. After the operation, Charlie is challenged by a little rat named Algernon, who went under the same operation as Charlie, and is now above the rest of his species. He must race Algernon to the finish. I'm sure that's not allegory at all, and I'm sure he's going to live a long and prosperous life, considering the book is literally called Flowers for Algernon. On the topic of allegories, the book is filled with many of them, such as Algernon himself, representing New Charlie, or Plato's allegory of the cave, or the biblical story of Adam and Eve taken from the tree of knowledge, is all meant to represent Charlie in some way. Back to the story, though. Charlie's IQ begins rapidly developing and learning about so many topics. The coolest part of the story, in my personal opinion, is the author actually wrote this in completely first person, meaning Charlie's writing actually develops as he learns about grammar. After many days, Charlie has finally begun to fly above everyone else, to a peak IQ of 170 to 180. That's about 40 to 50 IQ points above being a genius. Charlie's become a god of knowledge, knowing Hindu on top of like 20 other languages. Also, as his IQ increases, Charlie very much wants to be with a woman who had been teaching him throughout the time at the Beekman College Center for the mentally challenged. She realizes he wants to be with him too, but as they get closer, they both realize right now isn't the time for them to be together, as Charlie's mind is changing so fast, not changing his decisions, more like his IQ is rapidly increasing. Alice is scared that he's completely changing as a person, and she was right. This comes up a lot through their relationship. There was multiple times that they wanted to be together so badly, but Charlie's past wouldn't allow him. It was the very end of Charlie's story when they get to be together, but it's much too late. Besides that, Charlie's being flown out to Chicago to show him off to a bunch of scientists, because apparently he's not human. Wow! Look at the moron genius. But this is when he realizes they've made a crucial mistake in their research, causing him to release Algernon and run away with him. Arguably, the best and worst parts of the book happen after he runs away. Once he makes it out, he travels and rents an apartment, and there he meets Faye. She and her wild personality are different from almost all the women he's used to. The person was in love with his very neat and tidy, almost like his mother, without the narcissistic tendencies. Faye hated straight lines and boxes. She wanted to go to parties, drink, have fun, bled conformity. Coming from Alice's apartment, after failing to fall asleep due to his trauma, Charlie ends up sleeping with Faye, and believe it or not, this was a big character development. He realizes that he has a physical connection with someone, that he isn't emotionally attracted to them at this point. Now, back to the science part of the story. After plenty of extensive research, Charlie realized that the more artificially induced intelligence he or any other living specimen was given after the operation, the quicker that living specimen loses that intelligence later. Since he reached an IQ of over 140, he was going to lose that IQ very quickly. Charlie's intelligence is not permanent. Charlie was going to deteriorate and revert to himself, so he basically goes around a walking corpse. Algernon deteriorates quicker than Charlie does. He begins to lose memory. Charlie, attempting to do one last hurrah, decides to help people like himself and sees if this operation can be improved to keep the long-term effects. He runs around attempting to fix his experiment and fails. There's no way for the experiment to hold, so he accepts his fate after writing one last letter to his doctor, basically calling this the Gordon-Algernon effect, where this sort of fast growth will only bring the person down. After all this, Charlie deteriorates, finally beginning to revert and lose all his memories, going back to who he was before. Why did you watch this? Why is any of this important? Well, other than it being a good book, it also has many good allegories. It also lets us think about the place that mentally challenged people have in our society. It's scarily accurate to how we feel about mentally challenged people almost 80 years after the book was published. The story also allows us to see a view of a mentally challenged person's life from the perspective of somebody who's reached out of the darkness, reached out of the cave. We can make several connections from this to the idea that knowledge comes from hardship and trials. For example, when everyone was younger and learned the sun was about to explode, what was their first thoughts? Knowledge is power, but it requires strength to possess it. Adding on to this, intellectual knowledge on itself is not helpful. Charlie says himself, but I've learned that intelligence alone doesn't mean a damned thing. And that's the final moral of Flowers for Algernon.